What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We have a very fun video today to cover about Switch 2 and Digital Foundry. And they are doing some backtracking on what they stated for certain things on Switch 2 for Resolution. They're kind of flip-flopping here, and they're getting called out by their own audience in the comment section of this video. And this is on their DF Clips channel, not even on their main channel, but it is part of their DF Direct that they do every week. And it's basically just a condensed version of a part of that. And we'll be reviewing this, but there's some very interesting things they say here. Despite backtracking and correcting the information on some of these things, they make another huge mistake blatantly in this actual video here we're going to watch. And let's just take a look at it, and I'll give you my direct reaction to everything that they say here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Okay, so we've got some clarifications to do on existing coverage because new information has come to light. And where should we start on this one, Oliver? I think we should start on some work Tom has done based on feedback for Street Fighter 6 Switch, where prior to this, we only had very, very limited assets to look at from that Nintendo Direct. And yeah, basically, we said native 1080p. It's not native 1080p, but investigating how it's upscaling has produced some interesting results, right?
So basically, as far as I understand it, Tom originally pixel counted Street Fighter 6 as having a 1080p resolution on Switch 2, which it turns out was just the output resolution for 3D content, because it does seem...
So they thought it was 1080p, first of all, when they first saw it, and they said it turns out that was just for 3D content. Like, they were legit fooled right off the bat, obviously. But let's continue watching here and see what else they say.
To count internally to 540p there, and indeed when you actually look at those pixel edges, there is a certain characteristic that is indicative of DLSS among temporal solutions, which is that it has those curved edges. When you reveal an edge, it is a curved edge. And so we think...
And the reason why this is frustrating to me right off the bat is because this is exactly the problem that content creators like me run into when we try to cover games and try to give our opinions on things and try to like share what our thoughts are. And then you have a site like Digital Foundry come in and say like, no, nothing's running DLSS on those Switch 2 footage. It's all just native resolution. Then you have people coming in the comments on my content telling me that Digital Foundry said there is no DLSS in these games. It's all turned off. But in my live stream on April the 5th, I directly said that I said the exact same thing that these guys are saying here right now, almost a month later, that there was telltale signs of DLSS. Line correction. You could totally tell it was using DLSS back then. After I said that, they come in with their DF Direct and say that there's no DLSS that they noticed. So then you have people arguing back and forth. Well, maybe it's not using DLSS, but I legit said myself, it looks like they're using DLSS. And then I have to be like, well, oh, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm wrong because Digital Foundry says it's not using DLSS. They're supposed to be the professionals. And now they're almost a month later, they're backtracking it, giving all this detail of how they can tell that it has DLSS now. This makes no sense at all. Why don't they do the research and time it takes to look into this, first of all, instead of just going into saying it doesn't have it? It doesn't make any sense that they can actually do the time now for them to report on it. Should have done that in the first place.
Think that is actually a title, interestingly enough, that's using DLSS. We believe that it may be using DLSS to upscale to 1080p, which is certainly intriguing to me because that's a 60 FPS title. We, as of yet, have not seen that, and this does appear to be that case. Now, interestingly, obviously, on the surface, that might not sound very positive, right? Because initially we pegged it as a 1080p 60 title. It's only a 540p 60 title, right? That's DLSS in performance mode, it looks like. But actually, when you compare it to Series S footage, that title on Series S has much more questionable image quality. Now, of course, with RE Engine, you do not have a great suite of temporal anti-aliasing techniques necessarily to pick from. It's not a great situation. But yeah, I mean, the Switch 2 version, even though it's 540p internal, it looks crisper, looks sharper, looks cleaner even in motion, looks quite nice there. And I think that was Tom's impression. That was certainly my impression from reviewing his footage. It does actually look better than Series S in some respects. Now, it's missing some key rendering features from Series S, most notably perhaps screen space reflections. Those are not present. I think some other bits of environmental detail.
Yeah, so they're saying now, yet again, almost a month later, that now they admit that it looks better than the Series S version, besides missing screen space reflections, which they also say that they're going to say that those look bad anyway in the RE engine. But that's besides the point. Everyone noticed that this game looked better on Switch 2 since the Treehouse footage launched on April the 4th. So literally everyone could tell the Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6 looked better than Series S back then, and it's taken Digital Foundry a month now to admit it, basically, and actually go and do a comparison. I'm at a loss for words for some of this stuff, but I will continue.
So yeah, that is certainly a correction there, but I actually think in this case, the correction is actually a fairly positive correction in terms of this game's overall appearance. Yeah, I think it's good.
Mm-hmm. Also, getting rid of SSR, I would argue, is a very positive thing in any RE engine game.
RE engine.
It's extremely distracting and ugly looking in every other version of the game, so that's a win for the Switch. I think the main thing it's missing is the muscle deformation system.
No. Oh no. I can't believe this, guys. I can't believe they did this. They're still saying this. They said this before and they're saying it again. That Street Fighter 6 on Switch 2 does not have, it's actually missing the muscle deformation system. And what that is when you make the characters make a muscle, their muscles extract and contract. They get bigger when they're flexing and doing like their supers. He's saying the Switch 2's version is missing that. And let's go to the footage, since they don't show the footage here. They don't show the footage of any examples of it missing the muscle deformation system. But if we go to the actual footage, I have it all ready to go here. We can get the old analysis machine going here, our own analysis machine. So this is Ryu doing his level 3 super. We're zooming in on his arm here. So, but if we go to the beginning of when he's starting the super, his arm is not quite as flexed, right? Or it's not as big. It's noticeably smaller. Go back, big, small, big. Not very hard to tell the difference here. Oh, but you want to see it in motion. Okay, we can do that too. You can see his arm grow right before your eyes. Wow, really noticeable. And he directly said that this game is missing this effect, and it legit does have it. That's a fact. Now, yes, it does look worse or less detailed than the PC version has it. The PC version has more detailed muscle deformation, but it's still the same thing. The muscle still gets big in the same way, but it has more like texture detail and definition, but it's still the same thing. Watch. So yeah, it definitely looks better here. But the muscle still gets the same size as the Switch 2 version. Look, same size, same inflation of the arm, same muscle deformation. Yeah, it has more detail, but it doesn't. Just because something has more detail doesn't mean that the actual, deformation of the muscle is gone. Like from what he says here, from their discussion. So this is incorrect. Oops, I want to zoom in. So this is incorrect information. And basically, Digital Foundry has one job. And their one job is to basically look at footage, examine footage, and explain to people what effects are there or what are missing for the games because that they're actually taking the time to examine the footage. It's very clear here that, you know, John at least, and maybe no one else noticed, because no one ever corrects their statements when they have these discussions. They just make statements and they just move on. So their one job to actually examine footage, they failed to notice the muscle deformation system that's actually in place in the Switch 2 version. Yes, it doesn't look as good, it's less detailed, but it's still there. This is the kind of stuff that, like I said, content creators like me have to deal with. When you make content, you say, hey, look guys, the muscle deformation system is still actually there on the Switch 2 version, and then someone in the comment comes in and says, well, Digital Foundry said it's not there, so you're wrong. But like, did you actually look at the footage? Well, who's gonna believe you over Digital Foundry? Digital Foundry is the leader on this information, so of course we're not gonna believe you, Dave. But like, it's very apparent that it is in here in this game. They are 100% wrong on this. And it's a shame. It really is.
That was in the quote unquote next gen version at the time, so it's not quite there. But everything else about it, looking at this video, I definitely agree. It looks a lot sharper and nicer on Switch 2 versus the Series S version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, obviously, that Capcom decided to make that decision. And 540p is a very low internal resolution. But at the same time, you have to wonder what the computational cost of DLSS is there, which is possibly moving that resolution.
Yeah, and they talk about DLSS, and they also talk about Metroid Prime 4, and now they've changed their mind on Metroid Prime 4, but Oliver here makes the smart choice by not sticking to a clear opinion on what the resolution is for Metroid Prime 4. Oh, man. Well, watch what they say here.
Metroid Prime 4 as well, Oliver, because this is an interesting situation where we made a determination of native 4K resolution, but it was based on the direct aftermath of the Nintendo Direct, where the assets that we had access to were limited. Subsequent to that, better quality assets have appeared. And I think it's thanks to Lurig, is that the guy's name on the Discord, who did the heavy lifting on the pixel counting there on that.
Again, what is their method and reasoning for even making statements like that in the first place if they're not really sure? Why do this at all if you don't have the hardware to capture the footage yourself with? This is a good example of a YouTube channel and basically a website now, a site, a group of people that work for this company. And they make $20,000 a month just in Patreon donations. It's been revealed, it's public information, on top of all the money they make from these videos. So yeah, they have basically an incentive to push videos out and give people a very, very quick, impression of what resolution certain games are by looking at the footage. And, this is where they ran into big problems here with Switch 2, because now they're having to retract statements and kind of like flip-flop, and they're not sure anymore. But like, guess what, you guys? You never should have done that in the first place. You should have held off on making any kind of blanket statements on what resolutions are running what, if it's running DLSS or not. Been wrong the entire time on everything. Like, wow.
That higher quality assets that we've got a better fix on that now.
Yeah, so for Metroid Prime 4, I think the game looks, like, subjectively speaking, it's important to mention, like, it does look quite crisp and even 4K-like in some respects. Like, it's sharp, it's clean, it has some anti-aliasing treatment there, it appears, as well. Unlike the other versions of Prime 4, which are very raw. So the Switch 2 version at 1080p 120 is a raw, no anti-aliasing image. Likewise, for the game, it appears at 1080p, or rather at 900p 60 on Switch 1 in docked mode. It also appears to run without any anti-aliasing treatment. It looks very much like a 900p title. And this also has a 4K UI. So in my earlier impressions, I pegged it as a 4K image, but on further reflection and after some better pixel counts of the higher quality asset, it appears to be 1440p internally. again, with some kind of reasonably effective anti-aliasing, with some upscaling to 4K. And about that upscaling, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. Now, if you scale the image that's provided here to 1440p, it loses a lot of detail. It kind of looks like FSR1-ish, but with FSR1, usually raw edges are curved and rounded off more than we're seeing here. And it also doesn't have a super painterly look. So I'm questioning that, but at the same time, I don't think they're using TAA based off of image breakup over time.
I mean,
it does not look like.
If that's 1440p, that is like the cleanest, sharpest 1440p I've ever seen. It's so crisp and clean. Like I said, though, like these guys, I don't know. Do you trust them at this point? Nintendo says it's 4K and it's all over their advertising. So do you trust what these guys say? If he's seeing 1440p, but like he's not sure still. Watch.
Like a TAA to me. So again, but part of the problem here is we only have about half a minute of high quality footage. And even with Nintendo's press assets, they aren't ideal. With someone like Sony, when we get press assets from Sony, they're these gigantic ProRes files that are many gigabytes. With Nintendo, their press assets actually aren't that high quality. We have a few 100 megabyte Metroid Prime file here, which is not ideal. And in general, their media production is not, I mean, this is a tangent, but their media production stuff is not as good as Microsoft's or Sony's. Like, when you look, they did a Hogwarts Legacy feature recently, and they had kind of like this mediocre video quality with lots of artifacts, and they had like stabilization in post, so they clearly filmed it handheld and then used like their warp stabilizer in Premiere or something to stabilize it. That didn't look very good. So I'll on this particular game, I'm going to refrain from offering too many opinions on its image quality from this point onwards before we have the final code. But I think once we have
thank you Oliver for refraining from doing any more opinions. But like it's like, man, he even mentions here that the assets that they're reviewing are not the highest quality. They're press assets from Nintendo, but it's not the highest quality, and they're bringing out how some of these trailers were like modified and post process and everything in Premiere. So it's like, yeah, I would definitely refrain from giving your judgments on like what resolutions you see. They obviously can't do it. They're going back and forth. They don't know what's running DLSS. They don't take the time to look at it. They don't know what's running at what resolution. They're not taking the time to really examine it. They didn't wait for press assets like Oliver just mentioned here. He was just looking at the Nintendo Direct and taking it from that. It's like, oh, it sure looks like 4K. The pixel count lines up, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's just it's out of control really with these guys. But like it doesn't end there. There's more. They're making other mistakes as well with their PC coverage. We'll get into that in a minute, but yeah, so that's all we'll talk about for this actual part. But like, if you take a look at their comment section, they're getting kind of roasted in the comment section by people. This guy, from what I've seen, the Switch 2 version does have muscle deformation tech. I've seen Ryu flexing his muscles. Yeah, they're even calling that out. And I think y'all need to check again. A 15-minute video really needed for Are We Done Goofed? DF forced to eat its words, and that's what he means. Good point by this guy. The correction to the story never reaches as far as the initial report. Yeah, they're posting this on their second channel. That's going to get a lot less views. They're not posting this on their main channel. They're not making a statement. They're not posting on Twitter. They're just like kind of, gently trying to correct stuff. Let me go down here. I'm getting more and more disappointed by Dia's coverage of Switch 2. I used to take your word as gospel, but you guys have gotten so much wrong at this point. It feels like you are just randomly guessing. They are. They legit are, which is really unfortunate. Hopefully by June you will get properly tested games and go back to your old standards. This guy says, guys, you got to stop trying to throw facts, quote unquote, out before stuff is released. Folks are proving you wrong right and left, and you're losing cred fast. Do the work. Guessing isn't work and not why I've been sub for so long. 100%. He's 100% right. This guy says, well, I didn't see this coming. Seriously, guys, stop trying to guess what a console or game can produce without having the facts. I used to value DF content. However, that's been slowly diminishing over the last few months. It's not just me. A lot of people are seeing this too. Maybe, just maybe, waiting until we have the actual game. Thank you. My guys lost a lot of credibility for a couple of more views. Thank you. 100% true. This guy says, better than Series S, you say, and not PS4, and you were wrong about DLSS usage. Okay, then. Can't trust these guys. But yeah, you get the point. It goes on and on. But that's not all here. So to go along with that, if you recall our live stream last Saturday, we talked about Oblivion Remastered on PC. And in comparison to a 3600 CPU, which came out in 2019, versus this CPU that came out a few months ago, best CPU in the world, getting worse performance than this one. Turns out they placed a 1.5 minute long of bad edited footage here. This is a mistake. They meant to put the 3600 right here, not the 9800X3D, using hardware lumen turned on, and this one with software lumen on low, which would give the 3600 better performance, and of course the 3600 using hardware lumen. This is what they were trying to show. They didn't say that really out loud in the video, but you can tell because this is impossible for this CPU to be running at a worse frame rate than a 6-year-old CPU that's, or over 5-year-old CPU from this one. This was a huge mistake. And then they when they go over to here a little bit farther in the video, it's still there. When they finally change it, they're using the 3600 on their comparisons at that point. That's what they meant to use. But here's the problem though. So just like Linus Tech Tips, they got called out by Gamers Nexus, the tech channel, for not correcting their mistakes. In videos like this, usually you can put an annotation at least saying like, we meant to say 3600. They didn't even do that. They left it in there. And if you go to their channel here, there's no pinned comment. There's nothing talking about the mistake. There's no corrections. No one really noticed it. So they just left it in there for people to think if they watch this, wait a second, he's getting that terrible performance on 9800X 3D. Now, obviously, if you look a little closer, you can tell that they just made a big editing mistake. But this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with here with Digital Foundry lately. They're becoming very sloppy in their work. And like I said, it makes it very difficult for channels like me to do my due diligence and reporting stuff, because people will go to Digital Foundry and say, well, Digital Foundry said this, this, and this, so what you said is wrong. And then what's been happening lately is that I've been being proven correct and they've been proven wrong. So this is happening enough now that it's becoming an issue. And for them saying that the Street Fighter 6 on Switch 2 is missing muscle deformation, guys, you have one job. Do your job. And don't, force people to be your babysitters to correct you. It's embarrassing, okay? Like, seriously. Just either don't make statements about things you don't know about, or do the research and do the work, because that's what people are paying you for. Literally paying you guys, Digital Foundry, to do your work that you're not doing correctly. Get better, and I wish you the best of luck. You guys got to get better. Seriously, though. All right. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section, guys. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. And I'll talk to you very soon in the next one. Have a great day.